Hey there, excited to kick off our next session. For the next 25 to 30 minutes, we'll be talking about all things sales onboarding. So get prepared to exit this session understanding why you need to up-level your sales onboarding program today and some new approaches and some new strategies you should consider to accommodate sales onboarding in today's reality. Before we get into the content though, I want to spend a quick moment introducing myself. My name is Caroline Bray, and I'm the Director of Go-to-Market Enablement at Iterable. If you haven't heard of Iterable, we are a growth marketing platform that helps marketers deliver cross-channel communication to their users. We're headquartered in San Francisco, but have offices in Denver, New York, London. But really the reality is now we have employees all over the globe working from their homes every day. So for go-to-market enablement, that means we really need to rethink the way we are supporting our customer-facing humans and helping them better bring value to our customer along the entire customer journey. Onboarding is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And when you think about delivering value to the customer and how do we think about scaling learning across the organization, that really starts with onboarding. And when you bring that new salesperson or that new customer success manager into the organization. So this is something I'm very passionate about, and I'm excited to get into it. We in enablement are familiar with the challenges of trying to figure out remote onboarding. If you go to any enablement forum, if you look up any blog posts, typically onboarding and remote onboarding is one of the top topics. And it's because the challenges are really hard to solve. We're trying to help sales folks who are very relationship based figure out how to build connections and build relationships across the entire organization, especially if your sales organization is really focused on account-based selling and account team selling. This can be really tough to try to tackle when your new hire is not based in headquarters. We also have to figure out the different types of content to deliver. What is the best format? And how do we ensure that we keep content up to date and have that system scale? We also need to think about the type of content that we're delivering and the interactions that we're having the new hire go through. Especially in the reality where Zoom and screen fatigue is a very real thing. How can we think about breaking up the monotony and delivering content that really drives reinforcement and adoption? And lastly, how do we think about delivering value to the business? Onboarding is a very expensive cost. And until new hires are able to build repeatable revenue, it's very expensive and we need to be able to get it right. So all of these things are really top of mind for enablement as you think about building and maintaining an onboarding program. The reality is COVID and moving to a remote only world has only accelerated and exacerbated these pains, as well as added a lot more challenges to work through and not a lot of heads up. So, if you think about a salesperson taking about 6 to 9 months to fully ramp, these were pre-COVID numbers. Now we're looking at a lot longer than 6 to 9 months. But the reality is a lot of businesses don't have time to wait and they're trying to do a lot more with a lot less. So how as enablement can we really step into a strategic partnership role and deliver an effective program that creates repeatable revenue for the business and do this faster? The reality is it requires us to think about onboarding from a different approach. So I'm going to walk through the 4 main themes that I looked at when we had to pivot our onboarding program and some of the learnings that we had. And of course, would love to continue the conversation with you, whether it's during the Q&A at the end or on LinkedIn. There's definitely a lot of meat here, so I could talk about this basically all day. But let's start with the 4 main concepts. So we really focused on cross-functional ownership. And I'll get into that in just a moment. We looked at our metrics, but with a slightly different lens. We really prioritize thinking about the new hire and having empathy for the new hire experience to rework how we approached the problem before. And you really need to think about, how do you build for what's ahead? Enablement is thrown so much right now, and we have to do so much more with a lot less and be a lot more agile. So how can you build, as you're making changes to your onboarding program today, how can you think about future state and build for what's ahead? Let's start with cross-functional ownership first, though. In the pre-COVID times, you could get away with having an onboarding program, an onboarding strategy that was primarily owned and operated by the enablement team, an enablement team only. While that's not best practice, you could get away with it because you could fly new hires into headquarters. You could ask for someone to shadow that person. That person could meet with legal and security and their manager and their whole account team and build those relationships without you really monitoring the entire process. Reality is, today, we don't have that luxury. Onboarding needs to be a company-wide and company-owned program, and that starts from the executive level. I highly recommend, if you have OKRs or company-wide goal system across your organization, definitely recommend making sure that onboarding and the metrics and the key drivers you're driving towards for the onboarding program, making sure that those are visible in the OKR system is really important. And making sure that the executive team understands the cost and the value that getting onboarding right can mean for the business, and getting them bought in. Build that business case, find that executive sponsor, and make sure that the value of enablement is really well known, so that we are not seen as the cleanup crew and the reactive group that needs to just clean up the mess. We're actually the strategic partner that can help the company, especially through challenging times, get to the next level. So again, it's not just an enablement problem anymore. Onboarding is very expensive, and it can be a real cost to the business if done incorrectly. So what can we do to make sure that this is up-leveled and prioritized across the entire organization? First, like I mentioned, start with building those executive sponsors. Who is going to champion and keep the onboarding program and the work that you're doing in enablement top of mind and key and important across the entire business? How can you think about building and launching and distributing your rules of engagement, so everybody knows in the process what their role is and how they not only work with enablement, but they work with the new hire and really what's expected of them? If you think about onboarding in a remote only fashion, and really enablement in a remote only fashion, what we're really seeing is managers actually need a lot more enablement than ever before. They have to, build morale for their team. They have to check in one-on-one with each of their individuals. They have to help close deals and keep everything in Salesforce up to date. There's a lot that's being asked of them, and they don't have the ability to really rally and bring the team together on a one-to-one level. So they're managing a lot more, and there's a lot of guesswork that's happening as well. So enablement, partnering with sales managers is going to be so critical. Something that we did at Iterable is we actually set up partnership plans. So met with each of the sales managers and understand what were their goals, what are their current challenges, what are they trying to overcome with their team, and build a roadmap to understand, okay, how can we use onboarding? How can we work together to solve those goals? This was really key, and it actually built out a cadence in which we were checking in with managers, having weekly or bi-weekly teardowns, and making sure that we were close to the pain, could hear them, and come up with agile responses to help them get it done. Last but not least, it's really about a mindset shift. So whereas, again, you could have gotten away with onboarding being just an enablement owned thing before, it really needs to be adopted as a team sport. So not only does enablement, do the managers, does the executive team, marketing, IT, ops, recruiting, does everyone know what they need to do? The new hire themselves also knows the role they play and who their support system is, so that they can make sure that they're reaching out when they need help and they're going to the right people. It really also helps the new hire understand that they're being invested in. And they're going to want to succeed because they know they have a team behind them. I could talk about this piece all day long again, but one of the things that we thought was actually I thought would be really helpful to share is thinking through how you're delivering this content, organizing it in a clean and straightforward fashion, and making sure that you're launching it to managers and to all of those key stakeholders before a new hire starts is going to be really important to that program's success. Next, we'll talk about some metrics. And like I mentioned before, we looked and are still looking at the same metrics as before. What's different now is we're kind of applying a comparison or a slightly new lens in which we're looking at our metrics. So when I think about a new hire now going through onboarding program, what I try to look for are what are the parts in the sales process that traditionally really required that person to have in-person interactions with the customer. They don't have that anymore. And so now I need to think about how does that change the content I'm delivering to them? How does that change the skill sets that I need to enable them with? And how do I build new content where I didn't have that content before? I'm also looking at areas in the sales process where they're collaborating heavily with their account team. They need to understand who to go to in the organization and how to work with them, as well as where is it extremely tool heavy. Typically with prospecting, you'll find new hires have a really hard time understanding how many or which tools to use when, and how do they coordinate together. So having those 3 key moments in mind when you look across your sales process and look across your onboarding program will really help you narrow in on where you need to prioritize, giving that onboarding program a facelift. When we did this exercise at Iterable, we actually found that new hires, post-COVID new hires were really struggling in this solution mapping trial phase of our sales process. This is really the first moment where solution consultants as well as account executives come together, collaborate, and co-sell together in the sales process. This is also traditionally an area in our sales motion where we would actually have AEs and solution consultants fly on site, do in-person workshops, and they no longer have the ability to do that. So we had to rethink how do we enable around this particular moment and how do we do this in an engaging way. And something that we incorporated was AE and solution consultant roundtable discussions. So after the AE or after the new solution consultant completed the e-learning course about how to engage and how to go through this part of the sales process, we then paired it with a roundtable discussion so that they had the opportunity for unstructured dialogue, Q&A, and really rapport building, empathy building with the other team. This actually went over so well. It tends to be the favorite course for new hires going through our program. So much so that we're actually thinking about how do we expand this model to other parts of our business and to our existing sales employees as well that may be struggling with this piece as well. That's just one example though. Definitely have more. So let's definitely talk, and I'd love to hear what you're also doing at your organization. Rethinking the experience is also very critical. Having empathy for what the new hire is going through is going to be very important as you think about every single step of your sales process and sales onboarding program. The reality is it's hard for enablement to onboard new people, but it's even harder for new hires to onboard into a company where most likely they have not even met a single person at the company. Maybe they haven't even met the manager. Their interview process was probably completely remote as well. So they're trying to figure everything out and build relationships where they've never had that one-to-one interaction. There's also a lot more distractions. We're all working at home where we have, potentially we have kids or a significant other or, a loud neighbor or a loud roommate and a pet that's barking. There's a lot going on outside of work that is now inside work and inside where we're trying to learn. So helping them stay focused and helping them with their attention spans is very, very difficult. I'm finding that it's taking a lot longer for our salespeople to learn concepts, because there is a lot more distraction. There's a lot more noise thrown at them. So getting them to really take the key takeaways and the key learnings is even more critical now. We have, as in enablement, we have less control of their time, meaning they have a lot less structure to work with throughout their day. Previously we could have just sat them down in a conference room and go over the topics in a live course, or we could sit them on Zoom and have a live call, but we really can't think of it that way anymore. We need to help them operate with less structure and know what to do with their time and how to structure it in a more of an autopilot way. Lastly, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but building relationships is just so much harder. And when I spoke to before, if they haven't even met people, their manager or their peers in person, and now they're joining a team, they're feeling very alone. And that's a very unnatural feeling for salespeople to feel. They're very social, relationship building people. So what are things that we can do to make that more of a seamless process for them, so they are able to do what they do best, which is build relationships? Again, we saw hints of this all before remote only world, or in our remote only reality, but now we no longer have the ability to put it off. We have to fix it now. These are real pain points, and it's going to cost real revenue for the business if we don't start tackling them today. So what can we do? I'm going to walk through some examples of what we did at Iterable, and it really all starts with having a very critical eye. I don't like to think of the idea of, maybe before COVID, I had fluff in my onboarding program. But when we went into a remote only model and we really needed to make the most from our new hires as possible, I took a look at our 30, 60, 90-day goals and really was critical about, does this piece of content, does this training, does this concept need to be discussed during this time, or can it wait? And how do we lean on our learning management system or knowledge management system to, tagging functionality, search functionality, to enable the rep beyond onboarding, so that I can focus on the business critical concepts and learnings during onboarding. I think it's also, you have to kind of shift the type of learning that you're prioritizing during onboarding as well. Whereas before we may have done an in-depth course on deliverability, maybe that's less critical now. So instead of that, I'm going to tell them what it is, and when will they come up against this in the sales process, as well as how to find more resources on it and what resources we have available. That way I'm teaching them how to fish, and getting the most with their attention span that I have during that onboarding period. So it does require us to be a little bit more agile in our approach, and it trains the salesperson to be more agile with their learning as well. Thinking about also all of the work that you're doing across the organization, how can you repurpose that content to also fit into your onboarding program? Anytime we launch a new product or we roll out any tool or pricing update, we really think about modularized videos and how can we then take that same video and incorporate it throughout our onboarding program to get the most bang for our buck. So really want to encourage you, if you don't have a learning management system in place that can help you do that at scale, really consider looking at a tool that will help you make the most with the content that you're making. Collaborative learning is my favorite part of all of this, and you could talk for hours, honestly, about this one section right here, but try to think really creatively around the different ways you can enable your reps. Pairing e-learning with workshops, social learning opportunities, shadowing opportunities, one-on-one coaching with mentors or the manager is going to be really important. What we found when we moved into this remote only environment is new hires didn't know how to structure their time. So we actually, not only did we build out a calendar for them for live sessions, when they should be doing e-learning and workshops, but also when should you look at your tools and set up your tools? When should you have a coffee chat with a peer? and try to establish that structure as much as possible, but then also insert courses on time management and calendaring, because we can no longer just rely on the fact that they're going to lean over to their peer and ask for help. We need to show them how to do this and build them, show them the structure, but then also show them how to build it for themselves. The last piece is your buddy and mentor program is really important. Most onboarding programs and most companies that I speak to, they have a version of this in place. Because there's a lot more pressure on managers and on enablement, buddies and mentors really play a critical role in helping be an additional layer of reinforcement for the new hire. So I really encourage you to up-level your buddy and mentorship program content. Think about a training program or training guides for people that are stepping into that role, and include them along the entire new hire journey. Include them in Slack messages. Let them know when that new hire has a certification or a big milestone coming up, so that they can really lean in and understand their role. Last but not least, cohorts versus off-cycle. This is kind of a hot topic with enablement, right? It's like, when do you do classes versus one-offs, and what's the right balance? The reality is, in this remote-only environment, you need to be prepared to do both. So have a backup plan for when someone needs to start one-off, and be able to have an autopilot version of whatever cohort-ready enablement program you've built. There's a good chance if you're a smaller company or if you had a hiring freeze, you cannot wait to get that person to start. That is real dollars for your business if you can't get them to start as soon as possible. So how can enablement set that person and the sales team up for success by having a backup plan and content ready to go on autopilot or on demand? Lastly, we'll talk about, how do you think about whenever you're building content, you're thinking about what's ahead and saving yourself time on the forefront, so that you're building content that can last and can be repurposed across the go-to-market organization. When I think about sales enablement, I always try to think about every single piece of content that I build. How can I have this be repurposed to other parts of the organization? So as you think about making these changes for your onboarding program, think about, how can I also enable go-to-market folks with the same piece of content? Anybody joining the go-to-market organization at Iterable should have a consistent experience in how we learn about our customers, how we learn to speak about Iterable and about our use cases, as well as understanding who our competitors are. How do we position ourselves against them? So all of these factors are content that I've created in the onboarding program, but then we are also looking to repurpose and unlock for the go-to-market team, so everyone has a consistent understanding of what it means to be an Iterable employee. Last but not least, I encourage you to take it a step further and think about, who are your external partners and your external audiences that you should also be thinking about enabling. And honestly, the content that you're building in your Sales Essential program or any go-to-market facing material, think about how you can also unlock that to really enable your partners so that they become an extension of your brand and an extension of your go-to-market team. So last but not least, I'll leave you with this point here. Hopefully I've illustrated to you why it's so critical to have a team sport approach when it comes to onboarding, and really understand that it's no longer acceptable for onboarding to just be an enablement problem and an enablement initiative. This really needs to be something that the entire organization takes on and really follows the entire company strategy. So I'll leave you with the last few notes here. This is not a quick fix. You need to do this today. All signs are pointing to the fact that a hybrid remote model is going to be the new reality, or dare I say, our new normal. I promised I would only say that once. So really encourage you to invest now in the infrastructure, in the content, in the mindset shift that will set you up for long-term success. Thank you. This was so much fun. I hope you all enjoyed it as well. Before we go into Q&A, just want to encourage you, if something I discussed during today was interesting to you, or if you have feedback for me, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let's connect. Really looking forward to continuing the conversation there. Thanks again. Asked about the someone asked about the how do you scale adoption? When I think about adoption of an onboarding program, I really think about partnership with the managers. That's extremely important because beyond your onboarding program, having that understanding of really where are the skill gaps that are missing for the new hire, where do they need additional support, having that relationship with the manager is super important for that. So work with your managers and work with your entire enablement team to build out modularized content that you can continue to share with the new hires beyond the onboarding program. And I think we have, let's see here. We had some questions about the learning management system that you all use. I saw a lot of great companies on there around Brainshark, as well as I think MindTickle was on there as well. We at Iterable use WorkRamp. It's a great tool for us and allows us to not only enable our sales team, but really enable our entire go-to-market team, as well as our external partners. So we definitely encourage you guys to check that out, or check out the other tools that other participants mentioned here. There was also one more question on what we meant by go-to-market team. Rachel, shout out to Rachel on the Iterable team. She answered it there. But when we mean go-to-market, we are talking about our sales team, so AEs, SDRs, solution consultants, as well as our customer success roles, and then partnership team and our marketing team. But yeah, this was a super great session. Thank you again. Encourage you all to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Would love to continue the conversation there. Thanks, everyone.